Good evening, and thank you so much for joining another heart to heart conversation sponsored by Healthy Heart Nation, where we talk about the relevant issues that are going on and what we can do as a community to protect them and to change them and to bring about the relevant change in our communities. Today, I am joined by Dr. Jarlin Connor, who is my co host today, and she has pulled together a dynamic panel of friends and colleagues that she feels can lend her voice to the situation at hand. Welcome, Jarlin. Thank you so much for being my co-host today.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for having this platform on such a relevant and current and important topic. So I thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yes, so my name is Dr. Jarlin Connor, and I am an educator. I've been an educator for over 17 years, and I'm passionate about not just our students, but also the administrators, professors, and everyone that's involved in school in general.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that our voice is heard.
Absolutely.
And that we are understood, and that we are here to say enough is enough.
Absolutely. So why don't you go ahead and bring on your panel?
Absolutely, I would be honored. So the first person that I would like to introduce is Dr. Tashika Green. Dr. Green?
Hello, Danette and Dr. Connor. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Tashika Green, and I always tell everyone my first assignment is a wife and a mother. I've been married to the wonderful William Green Sr. for 14 years, and I have three beautiful children, Marquise, 24, Michaela, 11, and William, 9. And after that is everything else. So I am an educator, I am a speaker, I'm an author, I'm a coach, and I'm a consultant. And most of all, I'm a servant. And so
Yeah.
education is my calling, teaching is my gift, inspiring is my passion, and serving is my purpose. And I'm excited to be here today. I've been in education for over 21 years, serving in several capacities from a classroom teacher. And the last role that I served with the organization was a regional assistant superintendent in a large urban school district where I oversaw 15 schools. And so I'm excited to be here today to join the conversation.
We are excited to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jarlin?
Yes, and next I would like to introduce Dr. Akita Pearson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am Dr. Akita Pearson, and I'm so delighted to be with you all on today. I have been an educator for over 28 years, and I have done work in all levels from K-12 through the collegiate area. Also am a CEO and president of my own education consulting company, Premier Training and Professional Development. I also serve as executive director of Emmanuel Health Education, where we provide services particularly to men and address men's health and prostate cancer. And I'm also a mother of one beautiful daughter as well. And I am just a person who is adamant about activism for education and the betterment of not only children, but families as a whole, because we know that families play an intricate role in the lives of our children. Absolutely. And when I say advocate, I mean advocate. Either you are in the race to fight or you're not. So Absolutely. In the race to be just an advocate for those who are the voiceless, those who can't speak for themselves, and those who are afraid to speak. So I'm that person, that advocate.
Fantastic. It's great to have you.
Yes. And next we will introduce Dr. Jacqueline Marshall.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Marshall?
Absolutely. So, as you know, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Marshall, and God has blessed me to be the mother of two, Bobby and Caitlin. I have I've been in education for over 20 years, but my calling was to be a mentor. So while I've been a principal and assistant principal and teacher, my love for children has just continued to grow leaps and bounds, and really understanding also in my work that parents are our partners. And so through that, I established my own mentoring program, my non-profit entitled Bold, Beautiful, Brilliant Girls Youth Empowerment Group that I started in 2019. And it all came from being a school leader and finding seeing the need, and the girls saying, if you're going to leave, you have to continue to do this work. And
Absolutely.
I promised them that I would do just that. And so we not just are working with young ladies, but we've extended it to I am with our males as well. And so we're just touching the lives of children because they need it so. And so do the parents in terms of just making that connection and knowing that they're not alone. In addition,
Yes.
I just recently opened up my own Kumon Math
Okay.
and Reading Center. So
Fantastic.
again, you think sometimes you're in this box of I'm going to do this, and God says, no, 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 I have so much more here. So working as the instructor of my own center in Bowie has also been a blessing for me, but also to
Yes.
again parents and students who have different needs for different reasons, and being able to just not offer academics, but also that person to listen and hear what they're saying and offer resources and perspective as an educator has just been so fulfilling. And so I too look at myself as a servant leader, an
Yes.
advocate for children, but an advocate and partner to our parents.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And last but not least, our friend, Daniette Rouse, who we've known for over 20 something years.
Hello,
Danielle?
guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Daniette.
Well, I feel like I am like everybody else on this panel, where I believe in education and I believe in our kids. And
Right.
I believe that kids just deserve a chance. Every single kid deserves a chance. So I have been in education, I guess now 21 plus years in
Right.
all different types of forms and levels, whether it was an administrator, whether it was a teacher. High school kids are my babies. High school and college are the ones that I love. They bring me so much joy. And I, decided, a few years ago to walk away from the classroom. And I walked away from the classroom because I decided that I needed to be in a different space. And I realized that my kids needed a mom. And everybody else here knows that it's very hard to be an amazing teacher and an amazing parent. And that time goes, and it goes very, very quickly. So they're 15 and 19 now. And it's been a journey. It's been a blessing, but the Lord never let me walk away from education. And so my passion is probably surrounding teachers.
Okay.
While I love my kids and I want to make sure all of the students that I come in contact with meet their purpose, and I believe they have a purpose and they don't have to fit in a particular box, that is definitely my passion. I also feel like teachers sometimes get overlooked. So
Yes.
teachers are a passion project for me. And I've had, a few companies that have done that. Currently, right now, I run with a business partner, Andrea Gator. We run a virtual tutoring company. Actually, it's Virtual Enrichments. And it started as a result of what we saw was happening in terms of the pandemic, where we created a space, a very helpful space for students. And then we started working with nonprofits. And so we work with kids all over the state of Georgia and all over the country, where it first started as enrichments and tutoring, and now just has evolved into basically tutoring. And the part that I love is I believe in our teachers. Our team is all teachers. And I hire all of the best teachers who love what they do, because I know that when a teacher loves what they do, it comes across the screen and it becomes a thing where the kids want to come back, because kids need to know that they're loved. And if you equip teachers with that encouragement that what they're doing works, it makes all the difference in the world. And they have done all of the things that we've needed them to do. So it's been a great experience being able to use the gifts God gave me to create and reach out to these kids, a lot of kids who would be forgotten, and a lot of kids who wouldn't have access to this type of thing because of the organizations we work with.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, this panel is so exceptional. Yes. I am inspired just listening to you all. There's a lot of commonalities that I'm hearing. The service attributes, the fact that we are all mothers. I am also a mother of a 15 and a 17-year-old. And just the desire to make the community better and stronger. And so just based on what I've heard from all of your introductions, that is also very important to each and every one of you. And so, you know, in terms of just educating and being able to go into the classroom or to affect the administration, you know, I see that you guys are able to do that on a consistent basis. But now, not just, you know, of recent, but we're really wanting to focus on the shooting that happened in Texas, and, you know, how that affects you and how your, you know, affects your job, and in terms of what you're trying to do on top of everything else. So we have a couple of questions for you guys. And one of them is, you know, when you look at and you hear about yet another shooting, what do you feel is the most frustrating part of all of this? And I'll start with Dr. Green.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So when I think about the shootings, the most frustrating part is that change doesn't take place, because we've been seeing these shootings across the United States for years now, and we're still stuck in a place where we need to make that change. And so there's 50 people on Capitol Hill that's holding us hostage. And so with that being said, as I was sharing the other day on another platform, they said, what is the antidote? Well, one is the antidote to me is that we need to come together, and we can no longer be quiet. Your voice matters. And so you have to stand up. You have to stand up for the change that needs to take place. You need to know the representatives and your state delegates and the people in your community that you can leverage in order to get things done and get them done quickly. I mean, look at just what happened in Canada. Just in one day, they banned everything. And so why can't we do that too? And so that's what frustrates me, you know, but we have to learn how to take that emotion of frustration and anger and turn it into a passion, something that's gonna strike some fire in you to really want to do something. We can no longer just talk it; we have to walk it and become it. And so that's the frustration that I have, is that change needs to take place. And now we have to speak up. We have to use our voice. We have to get out in our communities. We need to know again who our representatives are, our state delegates, our county councils, and everything, and start making the change that we need to make for our students, for our educators, for our community, for our schools. We need to do that. And also another note to add is that also your board members. And so don't forget, we, you know, in different districts, we vote in our board members. And so we need to be looking at our board members too, that are going to look at this. They're going to put it on their agendas. They're going to also stand up for what is right for our schools. So we really need to look at that change and how we are being a part of the change that is needed.
Absolutely. Jarlin, did you have another question for the panel?
Well, I wanted to just comment on what Dr. Green was saying, just the importance of voting. And I know that it's coming around, and our educator board members are actually, we see a lot of billboards out right now outside, and people are promoting, but we need to know what they're actually saying and what their involvement is in our community. That is just so important. So I appreciate you sharing that part, Dr. Green. And I know that you know a lot of people in the community as well. So I appreciate you making that comment. So to Dr. Pearson, I know that you're all about change as well. What are your thoughts about what we can actually do in the community for change?
When we look in the community, one of the first things we have to accept is that there's no freedom without persecution. So we can vote, but if you're not willing to hold people accountable, you're still going to be persecuted. And when I say persecuted, that means that all of the ripple effects of things that happen, such as the mass shootings, such as the things that happen consistently in school districts where I've had the pleasure of serving on assignment, because I believe that being an educator is an assignment. And so every assignment that I've been given has been a joy, even though it's been a job of persecution. Because if I'm at the table, I am at the table.
Right.
And if I'm at the table, I'm going to hold you accountable. But the fact of the matter is, we can vote, but if we don't hold people accountable,
once they get in, huh?
Once they get in there, then, you know, we get what we get oftentimes, which is not what we desire.
Okay.
So in the community, it's the same thing when we're working in communities and voting people in for whatever area they're going to serve in. It's important that we hold them accountable.
Yes.
And one might say, well, how do you hold them accountable? Well, they're in that seat. You can call, you can visit. It is your right to make them, if they say they're going to do something, for you to make sure that they do it. And if not, then there are other measures that you can take to get them out. But I think sometimes people are afraid based on some of the experiences I've had when they speak up. Then they are whistleblowers. They're afraid of their jobs. And that's real, because a lot of people, they have to pay their bills, and even for the mental health that educators go through. But we just need a couple of more good warriors to be on the battlefield who's not afraid.
Right.
Step up. And for me, being an educator, my integrity is not for sale. So if I'm at the table, I'm at the table. Everybody can't handle that. But I'm going to speak the truth, and I'm going to stand up for what's right. And we need a couple of more warriors. Everybody may not be a warrior, but everybody can speak up. They can advocate, and they can advocate for their children. They can advocate for their teachers in their schools, and they can make things happen. Parents and families have a lot of power.
Right.
They just have to tap into it.
Absolutely. And so, Dr. Marshall, do you feel prepared in the classroom on a regular basis for an active shooter, or does the prep make you more stressed?
Well, I'm not currently in the classroom, but I will say that when I think about the question that you asked, it makes me think about our students, and we think about trauma, right?
Yes.
And so while I'm not a medical doctor, it makes me think about, even as a principal in a Title I school, and the trauma that our children face on a daily basis, and how, as a principal or educator, and as Ms. Rouse explained, even supporting teachers, how do we do this work in teaching and educating and focus on data and these assessments and all of that, and you have students where their normal is violence, their normal is abuse, and then they come into the schoolhouse. And when I think about what happened in Texas, it makes me think, what was happening with this little boy when he was in elementary and middle school? What transpired that was something missed? Was there not that psychologist or that therapist made available? Did that grandmother or parent not know or have that resource and not know what to do or where to go? And so when we think about holding people accountable, it's listen, the safest places was supposed to be is church and school. And what's happening? Killings are happening in church and in school, where it's supposed to be the safest place. We talk about education and our children and the mass shootings. It makes me think that principals and educators have a very difficult job right now. That we're creating a normalcy of how do you protect yourself? We got to lock our doors. We have to do all of these things, but we're not addressing the trauma that people, adults, youth that are faced on a day-to-day basis, where they have depression, whether it's psychosis, all of those things. And I don't think the educational system, we are prepared, and not enough resources are given in training to say, okay, how do you deal with this? And not,
Yes.
okay, we're just going to send them over here. We're just going to put them out here, because that elementary, middle school student turns into 18 years old.
Right.
And we're like, what
Right.
happened? And so I think when we start talking about voting, it's like, what are we asking for?
Right.
And what are the resources that are in our county? So we're asking this for this. What's made available? And do our parents have access to it?
Mm.
Or is it so much red tape or so much literature that it just becomes overwhelming and you don't know where to go, where to start?
Right.
And then when you go to the schools, how are our principals, our teachers being supported? When you
Yes.
have a child that's in need, when there's a family that's in need, because it is not my belief that, this is something I believe that has come over time.
Yes.
Traumatic events that has
Mhm.
occurred in the lives of our youth. And so I think we cannot, there's a lot about gun reform and all of that. And I don't discount that. I don't discount, we're bringing back resource officers and that conversation, but we're not talking about children and young adults that are facing trauma. And
Mm.
how are we supporting them through that? And how
Mhm.
are they dealing with that? And we're not then looking at a mass shooting when there could be some things that have occurred. They said this young man didn't have a record, but if we looked at his behavior, his school records, what would we see?
Mhm.
Was he off to the side by himself? Was
Right.
he suspended? Was he what were his behaviors? Did something happen where he had to live with his grandmother and no longer with his mother? There's a narrative behind each youth. And do we take the time? Are we given the time to even understand and explore that, to then be able to say, okay, here's what our schools need, here what our children need, here what our parents need. We need to make it accessible. And if we're talking about holding people accountable, then let's put the resources there
Mhm.
so that at least we can begin to look at addressing the needs of our youth in the mental health,
Yes.
and addressing the harm that may have been caused to them over
Mhm.
time. And
Mhm.
now they're asking for help, and we need to work on figuring out how to do that.
Absolutely.
Well said. Well said. I was going to, speaking of trauma, I know that Ms. Rouse shared with me a while ago about her daughter actually experiencing a gun shooting at school. And if you don't mind, I would like for you to just share from a parent's perspective of
Mhm.
what you felt and emotionally what you were going through, and your daughter may have called you. I mean, I don't know the whole scenario or the story, but if you can just go back to that day, and what would you tell these parents now that are hurting, and they laid to rest two little babies today,
Yeah.
and one coffin was a Spider-Man coffin, and the other one was a dinosaur coffin. I
Right.
mean, this is real stories that need to be shared, because so many families are impacted, and I would love for you to be able to share your story.
So I'm sitting here like on my hands, trying not to like jump in and say things, because it's multi-layered, right? Like every
Yeah.
person here has said a piece that is a piece. And I think the first thing we have to say is stop saying it's a one-stop shop. Like we
Mm.
do one thing and it's going to fix it all. It's not.
Right.
Right? Like there's so many pieces and so many layers and so many things happening at one time that, let me go back a second, right? So
Okay.
most of our kids, some of us have kids who are teenagers, right?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think we lived through Columbine and we were shocked.
Mhm.
And what was crazy was, I think the day before the shooting in Texas, I had a conversation with my daughter. So she was 5 when Sandy Hook happened.
Wow.
And that was so traumatizing, because I remember
Mhm.
literally trying to make sure she couldn't watch TV at 5,
Right.
because the kids were her age. They were going to easily look at the television and see kids that look like me, right? They
Right.
look like my age and that kind of a
Right.
thing.
Right.
And we were talking about it because she was talking about, the drills that you have in school, and nothing has changed but the drills, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and that was a piece for me, and it kind of struck me that your entire school life, from kindergarten, you're sitting here in high school, getting ready to check out, so to speak,
Mhm.
has been active shooters. So that was a moment. So to talk about the story that that Jarlin is talking about,
Mhm.
my daughter has moved to, a big school here in the district, and she's a freshman there. And by large, it's 3,200 kids. Okay, so it's a very large school, in a pretty good district with an amazing board member. Like, so when I said that all the pieces that I feel that we have a board member. She is hands down the most amazing board member I have ever met.
Okay.
And active, making sure all the parents have what they need and will hold herself accountable and jumps in these things. And I'm mentioning her for a reason. So I get a text message from a friend of mine who's in a totally different county and says, "Hey, where's your daughter?" You know where my daughter is. And I work from home, right? So I'm like, she's not, she's at school.
Right.
And I'm thinking, she's at school. That's where she's supposed to be. Okay, she's at school.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah, can you get to her?" I think I can get to her, sure. But if you're a mom, you all of a sudden know everything starts to kind of tingle, right? Like, why are you asking these random questions? It's coming out of the blue. The exact same time, my daughter sends me a text message that says, "Mommy, I love you. I'm sorry." Okay, so now I'm like, what?
Right.
What's going on?
Mhm.
Okay. So I just pick up the phone and call, and teachers hate it when you call your kids at school. But this is what I knew, that
Right.
if I FaceTimed her, if she picks up,
Right.
then I know something is wrong. If she doesn't pick up, she ignores it, then no, you're in class and you're doing what you're supposed to do. Well, she picks up the phone. And that was the first thing that I was like, oh, okay, this is okay, what are you supposed to do? So she, kind of explains what is happening. And according to the kids, what had happened was, in her story, somebody had come into the cafeteria with a gun while they were at lunch. Kids had seen it. Somebody yelled gun and kids stampeded out. Then it was, there were shots fired outside. And then there wasn't these kids that come from another school. And so there's a whole bunch of stories. I'm not even going to tell you that it didn't. It was just a lot of things. And so first you've got to say, okay, calm down. Where are you? Whose room are you in? And I have to say that I asked the Lord when she went to the school that she have one teacher that would look out for my kid. That's all I asked for. I just need one teacher. And she happened to be in that teacher's classroom. Thank you, Lord. That's all I need. I can breathe for a second. Hadn't gotten it from the parent, teachers, anything like that. Okay, is anybody hurt? Nobody's hurt that I know of. Okay, fine. So she's sitting there petrified. Can you come get me? No, I can't come get you. School's on lockdown. I can't get you. I am right down the street. So she texts again and she says, "Mom, they're coming to get, their parents are picking up. Come get me. Come get you." Say less, right? I said, literally, it takes me 7 minutes door to door to get from you to the school. No problem. Get to the school. Sign her out. The moment she comes out the door, there's nothing like when you come out the door and you see these parents are lined up, like they're not playing with you, okay? When your daughter comes out the door and all she does is start to cry, it takes everything out of you.
Yes.
Like, you're listening, you're looking, and that's all you see. Like, it's, I can't put it into words. And all you do is I'm just going to hold her. And you see the different kids and you see the different parents and you kind of hear the same story going, the whole thing. Bring her home. And then she tells me a little bit more. And again, it's what she's hearing. And it is crazy scary. Kid from another school. I was walking in and wait, let's go ahead and not tell lies here. Social media, right? There's an issue on social media. So, let's go ahead because that's a thing that we've got to bring back into the conversation as well. How things, again, get blown up and go viral, so to speak.
Yes.
And so, now we're home and she took a day. So then I'm sitting here waiting for the school to tell me something. I'm waiting to hear something and I don't hear anything. And that's a problem for me. And because the school had been really good. What was crazy is literally the night before the schools had said, please check your kids' bags for guns. Check their backpacks. That was the conversation. So, we get all the way to the end of it and nobody was shot. A gun was found and it was a kid. Kid was arrested, all of these things. Yes, there was a kid who came on campus. Actually, there was 3 kids who came on campus from another school. And so it's all of these pieces. At the end, what you realize is every day that our kid walks out the door, no matter who your child is, you have to pray for them. And then you have to pray for every other child that's walking through, because just like you said, the trauma, you have no idea what bag this kid is carrying when they walk into your school, figuratively and literally, right? I don't want you to walk to school scared, right? So no, I'm not really going to be a fan of metal detectors and things like that. Just because I don't want you to walk to school scared, but I am a fan of finding out exactly what's going on. The school did eventually get in contact with us. The school eventually did. And I reached out to my board member, and that's why I brought her up, because I said, I'm having a conversation, going to hold you accountable. And she jumped in the conversation and was like, okay, I got you. And this is what we're going to make sure is taken care of. And they had a meeting immediately and we got more details because, you've got to inquire and you've got to start paying attention to things like that. Yes. But at its core, when you start talking to other kids and we started talking to other parents, it came down to you literally just don't know.
Yeah.
And it's completely unexpected. Yeah. And as a teacher sitting there doing these drills and having a gun on campus, I sat at a private school with a gun that came on campus and we had to do lockdowns. There's nothing like it. Nothing like watching these kids and realizing your kids are down the hall. Yes. There's nothing like living through that trauma. Mm-hmm. At the end of it, I think we've got to realize that if as adults we can't get our lives together and we have issues and drama, how do we expect to hold our kids to a level that says that they should be able to do X, Y, and Z? We can't get ours together. We need to be able to help them. And helping them literally means making sure that the help is there. And help being there is not one counselor for 500 kids.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the question to the panel is, do you think mental health plays a role in the violence we've been seeing in the schools? And, that's open for anyone to answer.
I've had the pleasure of serving on the Maryland Ethics Committee, the Family Violence Council, under Governor O'Malley as well as under Hogan.
Okay.
And as an advocate, the only advocate on this particular commission, when I took the post, my advocacy was for them to mandate having social emotional learning as a part of the K-12 curriculum.
Okay.
And being the only advocate and everyone else there are from agencies, they have to respond supposedly based on what they're representing their agency. So it has continued. I lined up another one of my dear colleagues to serve when my second term was over, for her to continue that conversation. Okay. But even when we meet with legislatures and go to advocate particularly for families, it's not enough people at the table to advocate. Okay. So even though I've brought it up and it's been years in the making, there's a brochure. But to put together the legislation and to have enough people to go in to advocate for it. And even though I'm not on that post, I have someone there who is still carrying the same thing, and it's 6 years later. Because enough people who are of like minds are not there to get the bill up and done, right? The same thing can happen in school districts and in schools, but someone has to take it up to see it through.
Yeah.
But working at we have to work at all levels. We as Dr. Rouse says, it's multi-layered. Our advocacy is multi-layered, because we can work at the local level, but we also have to work at the state level.
Yes.
And at the national level.
Yes.
So it continues. Yes, mental health, but it's not just the social emotional learning for our children, but for everyone.
Yeah.
For our bus drivers, for our cafeteria workers, for absolutely everyone. But it has to be mandated. Oftentimes we can ask people to do something and some of them will do it. But once it's mandated, it holds a little more weight to it.
Yes.
So absolutely, I think mental health is a concern. But I also feel like it needs to be a part of the curriculum, just like reading and writing.
Yes.
And there are some school districts who've taken up the realm and they've done some SEL training here and there, but it's not instituted from K through 12. And those are some of the things that needs to be brought to the forefront, and some of the things that need to happen so we can see real change.
Yes. And Dr. Marshall, I think you wanted to add something to that.
Yes, to answer your question, I do believe mental health plays a part in it. I do agree that it's not just mental health. I do believe that there are many aspects to it, but I don't believe we can really ignore, especially through COVID. So many things have manifested through COVID. I also, do some work with schools system leaders nationally around anti-racism work. And so between racism and health, mental health, these things have just manifested and just really shown true to what's really happening before us. And when we think, I mean, even prior to COVID and as a building leader, I work with students and the things that they've encountered in their life
Yeah.
and they're trying to navigate. And then
And
their
that's the
parents
trauma
had
piece that you're
trauma
looking for.
and they're
Yeah.
trying to navigate. And
Mhm.
everyone's like, what do I do? And at the time, as a principal, I like, okay, who do I refer? Like wraparound services. Where does this come from? And so,
Mm.
and even working closely with Dr. Green during that time, like it's you want to help and you're just trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
do this. And so
Yeah.
this was me having 1,000 children, and so you have high schools that have maybe close to 3,000.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think it comes with, again, we have to look at the experiences. And so as we just spoke about the social emotional, are we talking to our children? And when these
Mm.
things come up, how are we addressing it? We go so quickly to one end of teaching, but not realizing, especially through COVID, like so many things have transpired. Our children have lost so many um, loved ones. And then
Yeah.
prior to that, the number of members that may have been incarcerated or just
Mm.
a number of dynamics that some of me as an adult could not imagine
Mhm.
having to deal with. And so I don't think it's healthy for us to say, okay, we really need to start paying close attention to our children and how to help them, especially when they are up against so many obstacles. Even as Kumon, while we are a small class instructional, and to your initial question,
Mhm.
I lock our doors, but it's just the children and the
Yeah.
instructors, so we don't have a lot of people coming in and out. But I even talk to them, and even the loss of a grandfather
Yeah.
or a separation,
Right.
that can build up. And
Right.
if we don't talk about it, that 5-year-old, 6-year-old takes that on. And then
Yes.
I become middle school and a high schooler. And if I don't address it, that becomes trauma as adults. And we talk about like how we just move on, but is it healthy?
Mm-mm.
No. And it just comes out in so many different ways. And so while
Yes.
I agree totally, there's different layers to it. I wholeheartedly think we need to really look at how to support our schools and our families with our children when it comes to social emotion, when it comes to mental health. We talk about physical health. We need them to be healthy mentally as well. And it can't be, oh my goodness, the stigma, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. We have
Right.
young adults that are facing some really tough obstacles here. And so how do we
Yes.
support them? I don't think we can really ignore that part. I think it plays a huge part.
Agreed. I think what's really important is a check-in. And I
Mm.
know Dr. Green is really good in having these check-ins with her students before even class will start, or just how are you really doing? Tell me what's going on. And that's really important, building that relationship. That's something Dr. Green and I always talk about. Building a relationship with your students is so important. So like what Dr. Marshall said, when they tell you and feel comfortable talking about their grandfather or saying that they're hurting, those are those relationships that they'll feel comfortable sharing. But going back to what Ms. Rouse was talking about, we need to be able to support our teachers. A lot of times these teachers are emotionally stressed, they're drained, they're overwhelmed, and they don't mean to, but a lot of times the teachers are putting them all in one box because they don't have the correct resources. So if all 6 of us are in the same box, us 6, all of us have our own issues, concerns, problems, dreams, aspirations.
Yes.
But if we don't have someone to really talk to, Dr. Pearson or you, Mrs. Batiste, then it's going to be an issue and a problem later. So we need to really be able to dive deep, but yes, support our teachers so that we can be able to help our babies out when they have these issues. Because the IEP and a 504, those are all great. But if we can't build a relationship, you can forget it.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to ask a certain question, and anyone can take the question on this right here. What do you think could be the next steps so that we can make sure that this does not happen again? I keep hearing it's going to happen again. And by all means, over Memorial Day weekend, it happened again. 15 shootings occurred from California all the way to Tennessee. 15 shootings. Okay. So what do you think that we can do for next steps? Yes, I realize the voting. Yes, building relationships. But is there anything else that we can do as a community, as mothers, as educators, as friends, to make sure that we do not have this again, and that it doesn't come closer, meaning in our own home, right? And sometimes we may say, oh, well, that was in Tennessee, God forbid, or Texas, and thank God that didn't happen to me. But what if it were to happen in your own home, in your own child, as close as it was to Daniette's daughter? Praise God, it did not affect her that way, but emotionally, it will always affect her. So what are some next steps that we can do? And this can be for any of us to answer that question.
You know, I think sometimes we do need to study certain things, right? And certain skills, as fast as technology has gotten, right? And the easier it's made our lives, it's also, we've lost some things, right? We have lost the ability to communicate. We've lost, and then we've forgotten to teach our kids how to do it, right? And so, you know, sometimes you spend some time with soft skills, but also when we look at how society and communities and politicians handle things, they take certain things away, right? And the things that are taken away generally affect our youth. You know, so mentorship programs that affect our youth, that give them something to do. I mean, I'll bottom line it. They need something to do. They need positive things to do that connect to who they are. And each kid here is something different. So whether it's art programs, what are the first ones to go? Art goes. Music goes. Sports goes, especially in communities where kids who don't have parents who have all the dollars should be able to get access to it, right? Where you're getting access to certain things. Those are the first sets of programs that are gone. And so when you have a series of kids, and it doesn't matter how young it starts, because it starts at a young age and it just follows them up. If they don't have options, if they don't get to see, they don't get access to seeing what life can be, that there are other things and that there are other ways to solve my problems other than my hand to your fist or the gun in my pocket. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. They need to see those things. And we need to stop saying that we don't have money to fund those things. Like you're looking here at summer. Looking at summer school. Well, at least over here in the South, we're done. Right. We finished. So we're done. We're done. Right. We're big and done. Kids had nothing to do running around a parking lot. Fights and all this kind of stuff happening. Does it need to happen? No. Is this like a necessarily dangerous neighborhood? No, it's just mostly kids get in trouble. So next steps are, what can we provide? What are those? And I'm sitting here with women who clearly have created programs to help kids. It just requires more things for us to actually stop being busy ourselves and figure out something for them to do.
Dr. Green? I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Pearson.
I agree. I just wanted to, I think it was an share that I believe all of us may be familiar with, an African proverb that said that it takes a village to raise a child. The village is broken, and it has been broken for a very long time. And until that village comes together, Dr. Connor spoke about the 15 shootings. I get the news for Baltimore every day. And over the weekend, there were 5 homicides from Friday till yesterday and 8 shootings. But it's the village. And we have lost that. Everything that happens in our community bleeds over into our schoolhouse. So it's important that there's a focus there. And we work strategically together. Because it takes all of us
Mhm.
to be a part of that. But we have to make concerted efforts in the community
Mhm.
because it impacts our schoolhouse in so many different ways.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And Dr. Green?
Yes, I was just going to share that, to answer Dr. Connor's question about how could we have prevented this or what can we do for the next steps. And I believe that each one of us spoke from an area of involving our, politicians and being an advocate and, letting your voice matter. And we talked about funding, of putting money in the appropriate places and mental health and things of that nature. And we're focusing, on the shooter and other aspect. But I wanted to look at another aspect of this question. Not only how can we have prevented it, but did we respond effectively? And then how are we going to how are we going to help our community to recover? And
Yes.
those are some of the next steps that we really need to address because in each situation, it was responded in a different manner. Although it happened, the response could have been different. And also, when I think about it, when I was a school principal from 2008 to 2014, every day I would have 3 walks in my building. I would have a safety walk, I would have an
Okay.
instructional walk, and I would have a culture walk. And I would have
Okay.
a safety walk throughout the day, majority of the time. When I entered into my building, it was 86,000 square feet, K through 5, had 750 students, 2 floors, but I had 6 ways that people could enter and exit the building. I would check
Yes.
that every day. I would make sure they were secure, making sure, doors weren't propped and things of that nature, making sure
Mhm.
a monitor was coming in, our surroundings. My goal every day, and I know, Dr. Marshall can, like she said, we've shared some experiences together, even at her school. It was a goal. Our priority was always to make sure that the children entered safely, everyone was safe in the building, they exited safely, and guess what? It didn't end there. That they got home safely. Because
Yes.
with some of my children, 70% of mine, when I was a principal, they were all walkers, and so that was even more great concern of them all
Yes.
getting home rather than riding a school bus. And I said that to say that as we are thinking about the next steps, we need to go further beyond like how this could be prevented, but how are we
Yes.
responding to it? Even
Mm.
after this incident, are we
You're
going
right.
back to schools? And I know everybody did back in their schools, went back through safety drills and,
Yes.
lockdowns and informing their, teachers, don't prop the doors open to run out to get your cell phone. Don't be that
Right.
distracted. It's nothing
Right.
that's distracting you from the safety of these children. And we're not
Yes.
putting blame on anyone, but what we're doing is trying to go back and say, what can we do better? Because it
Yes.
takes, it's like Dr. Pearson said, it takes the entire village to look at this, to hold up the people that need the support through mental health, to hold up the communities that need to recover, to hold up the moms that are scared. There's moms today that are scared to even take their children to school. And so we need
Yes.
to come together for all of those aspects to look at how could we prevent it, but also how can we help the community to recover and how can we respond better the next time?
I think that's
Absolutely.
Dr. Green. I think that's a wonderful point because that was a big piece. Like, how did a kid from another school walk into your school? How did that
Yeah.
happen? Like, walk straight in? Oh, and that's the internal, right? That's the
Mhm.
internal school conversation that you have. And like you said, as an administrator, you look at things. Oh, where's a particular hole? Here's a crazy hole. You've got all these teachers who are resigning, right? So
Mhm.
who's in the spots? Tons of
Right.
substitute teachers. In the
Right.
middle of substitute teaching, they don't actually have access to all of the stuff that your full-time teachers have. So
That's
when there's
Right.
a lockdown drill, they don't actually know what's going on.
that's right.
Wow.
And it seems something so, it doesn't even occur, right? But all
Mhm.
of a sudden now it's a big problem
Right.
because of the amount of substitute teachers you have in the classroom.
Mhm.
And they don't know. Like, teachers for her school, they did a text. They text all the teachers, right? Because they didn't want to announce because they knew there was an intruder in the building. They didn't want to announce it, right? They
Mhm.
said, well, the substitute teachers had no idea.
Wow.
Wow.
They didn't even know the
Because they
lockdown.
weren't they weren't getting the text messages. They weren't getting the
They
messages.
weren't on the loop.
Not in,
Because why
Yeah.
would they be on the loop? So you're making a tremendous, a tremendous point of
Yeah.
that internal reaction.
Mhm. Mhm. And I want to just make sure that whomever is watching, those mothers that are nervous and fearful about your child going back to school, we understand. We're mothers too.
Mhm.
Prayerfully, there are things that are in a line for administrators and teachers. And so parents, as a parent, I was reluctant to bring my son back to school today as well, because of the shootings that, just like we talked about, over Memorial Day weekend. But we know that whom we serve. And so we just have to know that God is with us all. And that's so important, for us to remember that. But if there are mothers out there, it's okay to feel concerned or nervous. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Absolutely. And I know that we have a lot of gun violence in the African American community, like as a whole, but are we seeing that same level of gun violence in the schools? It almost seems like when we have these shootings, they're happening in kind of more of the rural environment. So I don't know if you guys can speak to whether or not, like the metal detectors or the different, having high security in our schools, expecting for these things to happen, and the other schools are looking at like, okay, it's not going to happen. Do you guys have anything that you might want to say about that, or is that a false perception?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's a false perception. I mean, there have been mass shootings since the 1700s.
Wow.
The very first mass shooting took place in Pennsylvania, and everyone was killed, including the schoolmaster, and only 2 children survived.
Wow.
So it's not anything that anyone is oblivious to. In the urban areas, yes, we take precautions. We do the ALICE training through all of the schools. So it's not that we're not aware of it. And there are guns and knives and all kinds of contraband that is confiscated every year in our high schools.
Yes.
So not that because we haven't had such a mass shooting like some of the other areas that we are not taking precautions. So precautions are taken consistently, and it may not be mass shootings, but there have been shootings and people who've gotten killed in schools in urban areas. So it is something to for all of us to work hard at and addressing and preparing our parents and our students in safety. Because they're in their gangs. I mean, and our children are attacked. Our teachers are attacked. Our principals are attacked. And violence is real.
Yes.
And of course, once again, a lot of that comes from our community bleeding over into our schoolhouses.
Yes.
And even though we are set up to be a learning institution,
right,
at the end of the day, we still have to deal with that on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it. It's a maybe more individual instead of like mass across the board. Okay. But like Dr. Marshall said, and what Dr. Green said, what all of you guys have said, when it's coming into the house from the communities, right? Everything is coming into the school, but I will also say it's also coming in via social media. So when you have a moment where, sometimes it was handled on the street, now it's gone viral. Right. And now everybody's watching. And again, coming back to those problem solving skills, it continues to show itself. It is one of those things where it's just like, you're going to have to keep your head on a swivel. And certain times of the year, it is a total conversation. Okay, listen, there's going to be more fights and more problems at this time of year, this time of year, this time of year, period. Right. So you've just got to pay attention to these kind of things and having real conversations with our kids. There are some kids who get so wide eyed. Oh, they're fighting. Let me go and follow them and stand around. Is that what we're going to do? No, it's not what we need to have a conversation.
Right.
About what do we do? What is the etiquette, the conversations? And unfortunately, we get painted with a brush. We get painted with a very negative brush. Our kids get painted with a negative brush. Girls and boys get painted with this brush of we tend to be just more violent.
Yes.
And that's not fair. But we also need to be aware that things happen. But it isn't fair. It isn't fair across the board. There's so many good kids who are going to school, innocent kids who are just doing the things that they're supposed to do.
That's right. And the vast majority are doing what they need to do.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Dr. Marshall, I think you're
I was going to add a couple things, but one thing I'll say, can you hear me?
Yes. You can.
Okay. I think going back to things being shared, I think there are different incidents that show up in and the media will share certain things for different reasons.
Mhm.
Um, and I
Mhm.
know that specifically, and I'm not sure who just said it, the things that happen in the community
Mhm.
definitely carry over. And so
Yes,
even when we think about, I mean, we can look back to like redlining. We could think about how our students and their
district Indian, right.
in the in students and the different programs that are being offered, going back to how are we getting our children involved? Do children
Mhm.
feel like there's a sense of belonging, or is everyone from the community that's fighting going to the same school? You
Mhm.
know, and the number of principals, when I was there, I was threatened with a knife. Thank
Wow.
God somebody said something and stopped it. So,
Mhm.
but that wasn't on the news, right? It's something that
Right.
happens and we kind of move through it.
Okay.
Mhm.
But I think we just the media is going to paint the narrative
Yeah.
whatever way they want to. I think it's so many pieces to this that I think I believe Ms. Baptiste you shared. We got to take a step back and say,
Mhm.
okay, what are all the pieces so we can come together when we really want to think about what are those action steps because there's healing that needs to be done, right? There's some
Absolutely.
proactive steps that need to be done. There is teachers. Now, trauma doesn't mean just students. It means,
No.
teachers too, and
Mhm.
resources. And what about the substitutes? Then you have the parents, you have the legislature. There's so many pieces to this that we really
Yes.
need to take a look and be proactive and say, take action, right?
Mhm.
To say, okay, how are we going to take the necessary steps together as a
Yes.
community to say,
Yes.
okay, we can start here, even if it starts within Prince George's County or
Mhm.
the state of Maryland or in whatever district, just starting there, even if we have to lead that work, because
Yeah.
it's something that definitely needs to be done. It's happening on a daily basis. It's happening too often. Just in
Mhm.
Virginia, where the students had to go virtual unless they were doing testing, where there was a stabbing in that
Yeah.
local high school. It's happening too often. But as I said before, when you come from a community and that is your normal,
Yes.
shooting, fighting, and then you bring it to school and now either part of the community or the whole community, because my school, it was the whole section that came
Wow.
over. And
Yes.
I don't like your family, so we're gonna bring it up into the school. This
Wow.
happens in Maryland and Detroit, all
Yeah.
over. So I think it's an assessment and it's to just say, you know what, let's actively come together and
Yes.
start talking about it, but initiating some change that need to be done because
Mhm.
otherwise we have these conversations and then they're conversations, but what
Right.
are the action steps as we look at the
Absolutely.
different pieces that play a part in what we're talking about?
Absolutely. And Dr. Marshall, that was fantastic in terms of summary. We only have a few minutes left. So what I'm going to do is ask, Dr. Connor, I'll have you close us out. So Dr. Green, in terms of your final thoughts that you'd like to share.
Yes, so my final thoughts, I actually shared this on my platform on Saturday. I have a talk show called Mom Can See You that I host with Jacqueline Griffin, the mom of RG3, the former NFL player for the Redskins and Ravens. And
Mhm.
on Saturday, I challenged everyone that was listening to do three particular things. One, just look in your community. Just go right up and down your community. Adopt those schools in your community. Hold those schools up in prayer. Hold the students, the teachers, the educators, the family. Show up for them, support you. Even now with COVID protocols, we're not even allowing people to go into the schools if you really think about it. But go out there and be someone that's a vigilant eye in the parking lot or just, sending some notes of comfort. Just hold up the school in your community. If we all could connect and do that, then think how powerful that would be across, and again, I go the United States. The second thing is get out and get to know who are those people that you need to be writing to and showing up and holding accountable, as we stated. Know those people, get to know them, and show up. And the last one that I encourage everyone with is to change your passivity into your passion. It is not time to get quiet. This should
No.
burn something on the inside of you that make you want to show up great, and let the
Yes.
change begin. And so those are three things that I want to leave our viewers and our listeners with and challenge you to take on and take it on like Dr. Keita said, a warrior, and go and do what
Yes.
you need to do because guess what? The world is counting on you. So if you start, then it could be a great finish for us all.
Absolutely. And Dr. Pearson?
I'm just going to ditto Dr. Green.
Yes, okay. All right. Well, there you have it. Okay. Daniette.
I don't know if there's really much else to say. I will say this, that we make a lot of assumptions about our kids, and there are a lot of kids that are hurting, and all they just need is a simple conversation. I think we shouldn't be so intimidated that we forget to just talk and let them know that their voice is valid, and be the safe space for the kids that are in your world.
Yes, yes. And Dr. Marshall, I don't know if you had anything else. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think Ms. Ross ended that perfectly. Just talk to our youth, because that's so important, and let our parents know that there are resources out there and they have a voice and they should be heard. So if they need help and they see that their children need help, listen, knock on the doors, call your legislators, call anyone to make sure that someone is listening and never giving up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I am learning. So each of these panels that we have, I bring on, people from different areas. This is from the education group. And it's very enlightening, and learning is very important, because that's what a conversation is, right? You share and you learn. So you have to be willing to listen and learn. And what I'm hearing from, this panel is that trauma is real, right? And trauma is something that we've all experienced. So, and teachers and principals and people who are administrators are human beings, and they're bringing these things into every situation. The kids are bringing these things into situations. So, I am hearing that the need is really for healing and the ability to be safe and to be vulnerable and to be able to support one another in this aspect, so that change can be made, not just today, but consistently and for the future. And Dr. Connor?
And by all of you saying that, we would like for you to stay tuned for tomorrow.
Yes.
For our future leaders that will share their stories when it comes to this platform. And we just want everybody to know that we hear you and we are here to support you. And we thank you. And we thank the panel for being here today. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.